History is not a simple chain of events, one leading inexorably to the next. It is a complex system, a vast engine of interlocking gears. We often perceive its motion as a single, inevitable progression. But what if a single gear, one considered trivial, had engaged differently? What if a cog, dismissed as a mere curiosity, had instead been recognized as the key to a new prime mover? We are taught that the Industrial Revolution was a product of 18th century Britain, but this perspective suffers from a profound linearity. It assumes the necessary components, the science, the economics, the need, could only align in that specific time and place. Today, we challenge that assumption. We will deconstruct the engine of the past to ask a fundamental question. Had the Roman Empire, a civilization of unparalleled engineering prowess, simply overlooked a critical gear? Could a steam-powered revolution have been ignited not by British coal, but by Roman gold 17 centuries earlier? To understand what might have been, we must first meticulously analyze what was. The Roman world of the 1st century AD was a marvel of systemic engineering, but its power was generated by a very specific set of prime movers. A prime mover, in technical terms, is the foundational machine that converts a natural energy source into useful work. Rome's empire was built and maintained by 3 such systems: the biological engine of human and animal muscle, the kinetic force of the water wheel, and the harnessed power of wind acting upon a sail. These were the load-bearing pillars of their economy. Roads, aqueducts, legions, and grain shipments all were predicated on the efficient application of these 3 forces. Yet within this robust system, a profound technological paradox existed. In the great city of Alexandria, the intellectual heart of the empire, the engineer and mathematician Heron had demonstrated a 4th prime mover. His device, the aeolipile, was a simple reaction turbine. A heated sphere of water produced jets of steam, causing it to spin at high speed. It was, in essence, the world's first steam engine. However, it was perceived not as a tool, but as a thelma, a wonder, a philosophical toy to demonstrate the properties of air and heat. The critical disconnect was one of application. The aeolipile produced low torque, high-speed rotation. The Roman economy, however, required the opposite: high torque, low speed power for tasks like grinding grain, lifting heavy stones, or operating a forge's bellows. This failure to bridge the gap between principle and application was not due to a lack of ingenuity. The Romans were masters of gearing, a fact spectacularly demonstrated by the Antikythera mechanism, a device of breathtaking mechanical complexity. They could have, in theory, geared down the aeolipile's speed to increase its torque. The true impediments were more fundamental, rooted in metallurgy and logistics. A practical, powerful steam engine requires a boiler capable of withstanding significant sustained pressure. Roman metallurgy, while excellent for swords and armor, lacked the science to produce high tensile strength alloys needed for pressure vessels. Furthermore, a truly effective engine would have required precisely manufactured pistons and cylinders, a level of machining beyond their capabilities. Paradoxically, the most significant obstacle was not technological, but economic and logistical. This is what we might term the anachronistic fuel bottleneck. A steam engine is a voraciously hungry machine. The Roman energy economy was based almost entirely on wood. The lands around major cities like Rome were already suffering from extensive deforestation. The logistical challenge of felling, processing, and transporting the colossal quantities of timber needed to power even a handful of steam engines would have been economically crippling. The British Industrial Revolution was built not on wood but on coal, a fuel source of vastly superior energy density, which the Romans knew of but used only sporadically and lacked any infrastructure for its mass extraction or transport. Compounding this was the institution of slavery. This system created a powerful path dependence, a concept describing how past decisions constrain future choices. For a Roman aristocrat, why invest a fortune in developing a risky, expensive, and unreliable machine when cheap, abundant human labor could accomplish the same task? The entire economic and social structure of the empire created a powerful institutional inertia that actively suppressed the need for labor-saving technology. The gear of steam power existed, but there was no place for it in the Roman machine. Our point of divergence, the moment the timeline splits, is therefore not one of invention, but of application. It is a shift in mindset, catalyzed by desperation. We travel to the year 70 AD, to the Roman province of Hispania Tarraconensis. Here lie the Las Medullas gold mines, a vast open cast operation that is the jewel of the imperial treasury. As the mining shafts are driven ever deeper into the earth, they are increasingly plagued by catastrophic flooding. The traditional methods of dewatering, legions of slaves working Archimedes screws and large treadwheel pumps, are failing. The water is rising faster than it can be removed. The mines, and a significant source of the empire's wealth, are on the verge of being lost. Our agent of change is the provincial governor, a pragmatic and powerful official. Let us imagine he once studied at the museum in Alexandria. He is a man who understands both engineering and economics. In his desperation, he recalls the Tharma of Heron, the spinning steam toy. But where others saw a curiosity, he sees a potential solution. He redirects his focus from traditional public works, a practice known as euergetism, where elites funded projects for public prestige, towards a high-risk technological gamble. He commissions Heron's disciples not to build another toy, but to solve a single critical problem: pump water. This problem-driven mandate forces a crucial engineering leap away from the inefficient reaction turbine and towards a piston-based atmospheric engine, a machine that uses steam to create a vacuum, allowing atmospheric pressure to do the real work of lifting water. The goal is no longer to entertain, but to save an industry. The immediate fallout from this decision would have been messy, dangerous, and slow. The first decade of the Roman steam age would not have been one of gleaming engines, but of crude lumbering monstrosities of bronze, iron, and wood. The first pumps at Las Medullas would have been terrifyingly inefficient, consuming entire forests for fuel. Boiler explosions would have been common, a testament to the limits of Roman metallurgy. The sound of these machines, a rhythmic, hissing, clanking groan, would have been the sound of a new world being born. Yet, crucially, they would have worked just enough. By supplementing the slave-powered pumps, they would have kept the mines operational. This success, however marginal, would have been the proof of concept that the old system lacked. The economic incentive would have been undeniable. The gold flowing from the dewatered mines would have more than paid for the investment, galvanizing further development. Other mining operations across the empire, from the silver mines of Laurion in Greece to the tin mines of Britannia, would have begun to demand these new ignis machina, fire machines. The Roman state, ever pragmatic, would have recognized a new tool of immense strategic value. A dedicated corps of military engineers, the Fabri, would be tasked with improving and replicating the designs. This first decade would have been a story of iterative, problem-driven engineering, funded by imperial gold and forged in the heat of economic necessity. Over the next century, these initial sparks would catalyze systemic shifts across the empire. The constant demand for better, safer engines would precipitate a revolution in metallurgy. Engineers would discover that adding certain impurities to iron could create stronger alloys, leading to the first primitive forms of steel capable of withstanding higher pressures. This, in turn, would allow for more powerful and efficient engines. The anachronistic fuel bottleneck would become the empire's primary strategic challenge. The insatiable appetite of the engines would force a systematic search for new energy sources, leading to the exploitation of the vast coal deposits in Britannia and Germania. To move this heavy, bulky fuel, the Romans would apply their engineering genius to logistics. They would construct vast canal networks and perhaps even rudimentary wagon ways, wooden or iron tracks upon which steam-powered tractors could haul immense loads of coal from the mines to the rivers and ports. This new infrastructure would begin to reshape the economic geography of the empire. For the first time, industry would be decoupled from the tyranny of the river. New manufacturing centers for pottery, textiles, and metalworking could now be established near fuel sources or population centers, not just alongside fast-flowing water. The steam engine would become a new prime mover, supplementing and in some cases supplanting the water wheel. In the military sphere, the consequences would be profound. Steam-powered bellows would allow forges to achieve higher temperatures, producing steel of a quality previously unimaginable, leading to superior swords, armor, and artillery. Siege warfare would be transformed with steam-powered cranes and battering rams. The Roman Navy might have even developed early, slow, and unreliable steam-powered warships, paddle wheel vessels that could move without wind, granting them a decisive tactical advantage in coastal and riverine warfare. This new technology would not replace the old system overnight, but it would fundamentally alter the path dependence of Roman civilization, creating a new trajectory towards industrialization. However, this alternate history would not be a utopian one. The human cost of this Roman industrial revolution would have been immense, and its societal evolution would have followed a uniquely Roman path. The new mines and factories would have created a new social class, an urban industrial proletariat. These workers, drawn from the ranks of the landless poor, would have faced horrific conditions, long hours, dangerous machinery, and polluted air in densely packed industrial cities. This would have engendered social tensions on a scale the empire had never before witnessed. Would this new class have organized? Could they have demanded rights, challenging the deeply entrenched patrician order?
This
It is
piston
here
will
that the
pump water
concept
with
of the
great
social
force.
construction
More
of
force for a
technology,
catapult.
or
It will
SCOT,
breach any wall.
becomes critical. The technology does not dictate its own use. Society shapes it. The Roman state, with its authoritarian structure, might have monopolized steam technology entirely. Its use could have been restricted to state-owned mines, military applications, and imperial workshops. Private enterprise might have been forbidden from developing such a powerful tool, stifling the kind of widespread commercial innovation seen in 18th century Britain. Paradoxically, the rise of industrial machinery might have initially reinforced certain aspects of slavery. While steam pumps would have replaced the slaves toiling in the mines, the demand for food to feed the new industrial cities and raw materials like cotton or flax for the steam-powered mills would have intensified the use of slave labor in agriculture. The Roman steam revolution would have created a society of starker contrast, one of immense technological power wielded by the state, existing alongside vast plantations worked by slaves and teeming cities filled with a new, disenfranchised working class. It would have been a world of steam-powered aqueducts and coal-choked skies, of legions armed with superior steel, and a populace facing new forms of exploitation. Reflecting on this hypothetical world forces us to re-examine our own. The story of the Huron divergence is a powerful illustration that technological progress is not inevitable. It is not a simple upward march of human genius. Instead, it is a product of a complex, interlocking system of economic incentives, resource availability, and social structures. The Romans possessed the theoretical spark of steam power, but their system was not configured to fan it into a flame. Their reliance on slave labor, their wood-based fuel economy, and their cultural perception of the technology as a mere curiosity created a systemic barrier that genius alone could not overcome. This thought experiment underscores a vital lesson for our modern age. It compels us to ask, what technologies do we currently dismiss as toys or novelties? What fundamental, quote, bottlenecks in our own economy, or what forms of, quote unquote, path dependence in our own social systems might be preventing us from solving our most pressing challenges? The silent, spinning Aeola pile in an Alexandrian museum is a monument to a revolution that wasn't. It serves as a timeless warning that the greatest obstacle to progress is often not the absence of a solution, but the inability of a system to recognize it. To master the analysis presented here, let us deconstruct 5 of the advanced academic structures used in our narration. Understanding these will empower you to articulate complex historical and systemic arguments with greater precision. First, path dependence. This system created a powerful path dependence, a concept describing how past decisions constrain future choices. This term is crucial for explaining why a system like the Roman economy might resist change. The massive investment in a slave-based infrastructure made it economically irrational in the short term to switch to a capital-intensive, technology-based system. It was stuck on a path it had long ago chosen. Second, technological determinism versus the social construction of technology. SCOT. I argued The technology does not dictate its own use. Society shapes it. This is the core of SCOT. A determinist might say the Romans didn't have good enough steel, so a steam revolution was impossible. The SCOT perspective, which we used, argues that the social values and economic needs, or lack thereof, were the real reason. The Romans constructed the eolipile as a toy because their slave society had no use for it as an agent. Eurgetism, I proposed. He redirects his focus from traditional public works, a practice known as Eurgetism, towards a high-risk technological gamble. By using this specific term for Roman public benefaction, we frame the governor's action not just as a simple decision, but as a radical reimagining of a core Roman social practice, diverting funds from temples and baths to what is essentially ancient research and development. Prime mover. I explained. Rome's empire was built and maintained by a very specific set of prime movers. Using this technical term elevates the discussion. Instead of just saying energy sources, prime mover refers specifically to the engine that converts that energy. It allows us to categorize human labor, water wheels, and the steam engine as functionally equivalent parts of a larger technological system, making the analysis more precise. Anachronistic fuel bottleneck. I coined the phrase. This is what we might term the anachronistic fuel bottleneck. This concept highlights a specific type of historical problem. When an idea or invention appears before the necessary resources exist to make it viable on a large scale. The Roman steam engine was an idea stranded in time, waiting for a coal-based economy that was over a millennium and a half in the future. It was an anachronism, a thing belonging to a period other than that in which it exists. By integrating these concepts into your vocabulary, you can move from simply describing historical events to analyzing them as complex, dynamic systems.